Have you ever wanted to go tent camping but didn't know where to start?
We're MK and TJ. We're tent camping across the U.S. in all 50 states.
And today we are sharing our advice for first-time tent campers.
Let's get started.
Start it up.
We have a ton of advice for first-time tent campers, and that's because we've camped in the warm, the hot, the snow, the cold, the rain, the storms. We've made all of the mistakes so you don't have to.
But before we go any further, if you are into camping, traveling, or outdoor content, then make sure you subscribe to our channel to follow along our 50 states tour and to see our outdoor gear reviews and that sort of thing.
All right, so let's jump in. Just to give you guys an idea of what we're gonna be talking about today, we're gonna be talking about what to bring, where to go, when to go, and things you might not have thought about.
First, let's talk about what to bring.
And what not to bring.
So when traveling or packing, you've probably heard the saying that it's better to have packed it and not needed it than to not have packed it.
Well, that might be true. The last thing you want to do is just pack a ton of stuff that you don't need.
One of the most important things that we need to stress is that if you are just starting out tent camping, do not go buy a bunch of expensive, fancy, top-of-the-line gear. You don't need it.
That's right. Don't waste your money. That gear is made for people who camp regularly, all the time, in all sorts of weather conditions. If it's your first time camping, you can find exactly what you need in the sporting goods section of your big box store.
Yes, he's absolutely right. We camped our first 9 states in a $20 Walmart tent. Now we've upgraded to the REI Base Camp 4, which we absolutely love, but this tent was almost $400 and we don't recommend that for starting out. We camp, like TJ said, all the time in lots of different conditions, so it's worth it for us now, but you can do so much in just a basic tent from Walmart.
That's right, and if you are interested in our tent specifically, we actually made a video just about this tent. Go check it out, we'll link it below.
Next, let's talk about sleeping bags.
Sleeping bags are so important. Your sleeping bag choice can make the difference between baking you like a potato or allowing you to freeze like a popsicle.
It's really important to pick a sleeping bag for the weather conditions that you will be camping in. And we always recommend that you pick a degree rating that is 20 degrees below what you are expecting.
We also use sleeping bag liners, which can add up to 20 degrees of warmth inside of your sleeping bag.
And if you're camping in the cold often, make sure you check out our video that's all about tent camping in cold weather so you can see how we stay warm.
Now let's talk about what you're sleeping on. We've slept on all sorts of things like cots, air mattresses, and sleeping pads, and any kind of combination of those things together.
In our camping in cold weather video, as well as our sleeping pad review video, we talk about the impacts of each of those things in different weather conditions. So for this video, let's just talk about the implications of them.
Let's talk about the budget. The air mattress is going to be the least expensive option. However, it's also going to be the most cheaply made of the 3 options. Your cot is going to be your more expensive, and then the sleeping pads are all over the place when pricing. Although, you get what you pay for with camping gear.
You really do, which is why we prefer a sleeping pad, because we camp a whole lot. Again, this goes back to how often you're going to camp, what conditions you're going to camp in. The sleeping pad is warmer and it's a little bit more comfortable. It's also better for camping in the cold, but if you're just going to camp in mild weather, an air mattress is great. You don't need to spend a lot of money.
Now let's talk about camp food. Again, it's so important not to overpack, so make a list of what you want to eat, the ingredients it takes, and boom, there's your shopping list.
A pro tip here is that if you have to buy something for one of your meals, like ground beef for example, if your recipe calls for half a pound of ground beef, but you can only buy it in 1 pound at a time, then go ahead and plan for more than one meal that uses the ground beef so you don't have leftovers.
Also consider how much you want to be cooking. Camp cookware is so expensive and it takes up a lot of space, and sometimes sandwiches are the best option.
Yes, but you have to consider your weather conditions and all of that when you're deciding your food also, because sandwiches are super great and we eat sandwiches a whole lot. They're convenient, cheap, easy, you don't have to cook them, but like when we went to the Grand Canyon and we were hiking in the snow, by the time we got back, we wanted something a little heartier since we'd been working so hard, and we didn't want anything cold because it was cold outside all day. We just wanted warm food, so we should have thought about that ahead of time.
If you are planning on cooking though, make sure you have everything you need to pull it off. So we use a Coleman 2-burner stove with propane. We'll need a lighter, and make sure you have all of the parts to the stove before you leave on your trip.
We've made that mistake. We got our camp stove out and realized that we didn't have, what's that thing called?
Grate.
The grate thing that sits over the burners that you put the pans on. So we have to put the pans right on the burners, and that's not safe. So sandwiches it is. One last thing about food storage is that make sure your food is stored, number one, in your cooler, or if it's dry food, in a container that seals, not just a bag. Put the bag in the container that seals, and leave it in your car if at all possible. If you have to be outside, it needs to be in a bag that you can tie up in a tree to keep away from animals. People think even when you're in a campground, animals are not that much of a threat, but that is totally wrong. Make sure your food is sealed.
Do not bring food or drink in your tent, even water. Last, the most important thing that you'll have to remember for cooking at your campsite are utensils, plates, cups, and most importantly, trash bags. Leave no trace. If you bring it in, pack it up and pack it out.
Absolutely. And the last bit of advice is that you always want to make sure you bring enough water. If you're going to overpack, this is where you want to overpack. We have gotten in places before that we did not take enough water, and there's nothing more miserable or scary, honestly, than that. So make sure you always have enough water with you.
All right, now let's talk about where to camp.
When deciding where to camp, you also have to consider when you're camping. Always be looking at the weather and take into consideration the temperatures that you're camping in. If you love the cold, great, go camping in the cold. But if you don't put yourself in that situation right off the bat.
And continue to monitor the weather situation even during your camping trip, because sometimes a cold front that is completely unexpected can move in, and if it starts to snow, you're not going to fare very well in your t-shirt.
That is very true, and while this seems unlikely, we have found ourselves in that situation before.
It's snowing!
And your plans might need to change a little bit.
There's not a lot to do here, I guess, when it snows, so we're just gonna drive around and figure out what we want to do. Another thing to consider when you're planning when to go on your camping trip is peak tourist seasons. If it's your local campground, you're more likely to snatch up a last-minute campsite than if your local campground is Yellowstone National Park, where you have to book a year in advance.
Now that we've talked about what to take, where to go, and when to go, let's talk about the things you might not consider.
These are the real pro tips that we wish we would have known before we started camping, because it would have made the experience that much more enjoyable.
Pro tip number 1, TJ mentioned not taking any food or drink into your tent earlier. This applies to everything. Only take what you need for sleeping. Don't take chapstick, Germ-X, cologne, anything that could be scented or possibly put you in danger with animals.
And animals can actually smell water from miles away. So if you keep water inside your tent and animals are thirsty, they're gonna come inside your tent to drink water.
Pro tip number 2 is figure out a plan to charge your devices before you go. We like to use a combination of inverters in our car and power banks in our backpacks.
Speaking of devices, a lot of campgrounds don't actually have cell coverage. So just be monitoring your cell coverage as you're entering the campground so you can remember where you lost it if you need to go back to that point to make an emergency call.
Pro tip number 3 is that if this is your first time camping, make sure you get to your campsite with plenty of time to set up all of your stuff in the daylight.
Also, it's a good idea to go ahead and practice setting up your tent and your supplies at home before you make your camping trip journey, because that way you have plenty of experience in doing it in case you get in a bind. I'm pretty sure we can do ours in our sleep because we've done it so many times while we're sleeping.
Yeah. Pro tip number 4 may seem simple, but make sure all of your flashlights, lanterns, and headlamps have very full batteries. And pro tip number 5 is to go prepared, which is what this video is all about. But go prepared and have a positive mindset.
And if you do that, you're gonna have a great time.
So if you found this video helpful, make sure you are subscribed and that you watch our other gear reviews and all that sort of stuff to help you out. And
also, if you have any tips, we'd love to hear them in the comments below. We'll see you guys in the next video. That was good.
Intro.
Okay.
That's not what our intro sounds like. That's not what you say.
What am I supposed to say?
Oh yeah. Sorry. You're right.
Right now, there's somebody approaching. Oh man, we didn't get popsicles and potatoes.
I know. It's okay.
Okay.
If you're tent camping in the cold, be sure to check out our video. That's all about that, so you can. I'm not
Let me
doing
just
good
take
today.
it.
I'm not doing good today at all. Oh, it's about to die.
Is it blinking red?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and stop.
Pardon the blower behind us.
It's getting a little darker because the sun's going down. Whoop, whoop, whoop. There we go.
What the heck is
Someone's
that?
like having a party on the highway.
What is going on?
And something in our backpacks, I don't remember what they're called.
Power bank.
Power banks, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, pro tip number 2 is that you should figure.
And actually, I'm pretty sure we have done it in our sleep a few times because we've been sleeping while we've done it. Is that weird? Okay. Pull it together. I need to redo that.
Let's go! TJ,
What?
you didn't hit record.
What do you mean I didn't hit record? Yes, I did. I hit freaking record.
You.